But I guess we'll kick off with an interesting story which has it's got various angles, I think, this one, and that is it's linked with the ongoing plans surrounding Stonehenge and the bypass. There's a so-called long and a short bypass, I believe, and you this morning brought to our attention that the CBA has now finally commented on this whole situation. Can you give us a little bit of background and also comment on the comment?
Okay. In a nutshell, and this is a long story, for many years now, people have accepted across the board, from transport people to archaeologists, tourism people and so on, that the situation regarding Stonehenge on Salisbury Plain in south of England is not satisfactory. There's a road called the A303, which is the main trunk road between London and the southwest, which passes close to Stonehenge. It hasn't been updated or upgraded for many years now, and particularly in the summer, and particularly at choke times like weekends and bank holidays, it becomes choked with traffic.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there have been various proposals to either bypass on the surface or bypass through a tunnel the area of Stonehenge, and it's worth pointing out, actually, in spite of some media reports, it doesn't go underneath Stonehenge; it goes closer to Stonehenge. But it's part of the Stonehenge isn't going to be falling into a hole in the ground created by the tunnel. But what is being proposed at the moment is a variation on a plan, again, which has been around for many years and was floated, for example, at the Millennium and then fell through for various reasons, to bore a dual carriageway tunnel under the Stonehenge landscape, in the vicinity of the main monument, and effectively bury the road, and then remove the road from the road surface and reintegrate the landscape. Now, obviously, in many ways, and I think it's generally accepted, that would be probably a good thing. At the moment,
and I'll just briefly just chime in on that. In so much as it is, from a public standpoint, people often comment on how ugly it is to have trucks passing by Stonehenge, essentially. But also, interestingly, from an archaeological perspective, there's an argument here for it being a good thing. In so much as there have been criticisms of attempts to interpret the Stonehenge, for example, in its landscape, as one cannot, in so much as there's a great big road passing through it. So actually, it may even aid our understanding of the monument to have some sort of landscape restoration. But I'll pass back to you now. Yep.
You're absolutely right. Now, what has happened recently is that just over a week ago, the Department for Transport, the Transport Secretary Chris Grayling, on behalf of the British government, basically launched a consultation, a public consultation, which runs until the 5th of March, to seek opinions on what's called the short tunnel option. Mm-hmm. The short tunnel option has been put forward by Highways England, which is the government arm's length body that runs highways and roads and the transport infrastructure. And what they've effectively gone for is the cheapest option, i.e. the shortest tunnel. Mm-hmm. Now, according to opponents of the scheme, and that includes people like individuals, but also a group called the Stonehenge Alliance, it would be a highly damaging option because the short tunnel option places two portals, i.e. the ramps that go down into the tunnel, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. within the boundary of the UNESCO World Heritage Site. Now, that's the other thing about Stonehenge. It's not just an iconic monument in Britain. It's been recognised by UNESCO as of international importance and of universal value. It's one of our cultural icons that has to be protected.
And so this would be, in effect, like having the entrance and exit of a tunnel almost underneath the pyramids in Egypt. It would be.
That's very.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a very good analogy, and so perhaps people can picture why the criticism is being made. And again, this isn't, I'm not endorsing it one way or the other, but the criticism is that the portals, for example, are both very large and obvious. Also, they're highly lit. Because obviously roads carry lighting, and particularly roads going into tunnels carry lighting. So the idea, you would have, even at night, you would have 24 you'd have 2 large pools of light at either side of the Stonehenge landscape, and the associated light spillage and so on. So we're not just talking about physical damage to the UNESCO World Heritage Site, although again the critics say that particularly at the western end, the portal is very close to a Bronze Age barrow group, an important Bronze Age barrow group. That hasn't been fully taken into consideration either. The thing is, you see, in the past there were, and in fact there still are on the table, at least as far as critics are concerned, what's called the long tunnel options, which includes placing the portals outside the World Heritage Site.
What is the difference between the long and the short tunnel in terms of distance? Do you happen to know?
I'd need to check the figures, but we're talking. We're not talking about channel tunnel length here. On the other hand, we are talking about some very significant engineering and issues around airflows and things like that. Are ventilation shafts needed and that kind of thing. So I think that's part of the problem. These aren't simple arguments. They're not. And you can answer as an archaeologist on one level, but then you have to ask the highways engineers and the lighting experts like any large infrastructure project nowadays, it's a synthesis of opinion.
So it's interesting here that in the CBA statement they say towards the end, we are keen to work constructively with Highways England and other stakeholders to find an achievable solution to ensure that the benefits of removing the A303 from the landscape around Stonehenge can be realised in the coming years. Now, what is I've seen various reactions, as it were, to this sort of statement. And for example, earlier on in the statement, it's I'll put a link in the video description below, and also made available attached to any other places where people can hear this. Earlier on, they sort of talk about how the CBA is trying to sort of host a public meeting in Salisbury and essentially encourage discussion. But I think that's sort of part of the key here is actually that this, ironically enough, given that we're discussing it as our first story, is not just an archaeological interest story. It seems as though, I know I'm asking more than one question here. It seems as though lots of archaeologists are getting very passionate about this, and some of them think that actually it shouldn't happen at all. Other people seem to think that if it does happen, there should be an extraordinarily concentrated archaeological effort preceding it, and therefore it'll add to the cost of the process. I mean, what do you think? What do you think is going to come out of this, based on, for example, the CBA stance, and also actually for the archaeological community?
I think what's very interesting about the CBA's stance is, and this is a statement that was released by the CBA's trustees, so it's its governing body effectively, which includes a number of extremely experienced, very highly qualified people, and people with experience of working in the public sphere as well. I think that what they are saying is that the consultation has, if you like, been launched on the basis of partial information, and I say that because the statement says that they want to see the publication of the latest evidence based on from the evaluation work that's been going on Salisbury Plain along with the lines of the proposed tunnel. That isn't available at the moment, and obviously any information about such a incredibly important, sensitive archaeological landscape is going to feed into the process. The other thing is, by offering to host a meeting in Salisbury, they are playing to a criticism that has been made of the consultation, whereby it is with the exception of one meeting that's being held for the Society of Antiquaries here in London, all the meetings are being held locally in Wiltshire, in local venues for local people. Now, obviously, it is a very important local planning issue, in terms of the local infrastructure network. One of the issues around, and one of the reasons the proposal is going forward, is the issue of rat running through local villages, where people who are stuck in traffic jams on the A303 try and find a way around them through going through in the local rural road network. And for people who aren't familiar with it, that part of Wiltshire is very rural. There's a lot of small country roads, small country villages. It's a wonderful part of the country. It's one of the reasons it's a World Heritage Site. So there are all these issues playing in, but I think there's a subtext that the government. There's an old joke: never launch a consultation unless you know the answer you're going to get. And I think there's a suspicion that the Highways England and the government know exactly what they want, which is the cheap short tunnel as soon as possible, because that plays to their infrastructure agenda, particularly in the current climate with the Brexit debate and so on, where they can be seen to be promoting, Britain PLC goes to work and is open for business, and that means having an open transport infrastructure too. And this is a long-term bottleneck. There is no denying it's a problem. And I think all archaeologists have to accept that. With the consultation, I think the suggestion is that basically the implications, I'm not saying the CBA say this, but certainly I think the implication from a number of the critics and looking at the way it's been mounted is effectively the consultation is rigged to come to the conclusion that the short tunnel is the option that should be adopted. That and one of the reasons for saying that is that the meeting, there is no open public meeting at the British Museum. There's no open public meeting at a major northern museum. There is no there's no discussion at UNESCO in Paris because it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's being treated as a local planning issue.
Yeah, and so yes, again, you probably couldn't get away with precisely this sort of engineering work going on underneath the Great Pyramid of Giza, but certainly not without other national, international bodies getting involved.